what I want to talk about just fits in perfectly with what Dan was saying earlier. I mean, my title is Resting in Being, and what he was talking about of just, coming back and resting in the hub and those qualities that are there. I mean, we talk about our true nature. Our true nature is those qualities of ease, of love, of peace, these things. That's who we are. That's what we are inside. But it gets so covered up by all our worry, our thinking, our anxiety, our planning, all the things we need to take care of. We are so busy in our heads that we very, very seldom take the time to actually just drop back to that basic level of possibility, just to the pure, just being without all this other stuff. I'm always intrigued, the verb to be is just, what is. But being, the verb to be is, I am, you are, it is. And we think of being as what is. But on the first person level, when we drop back to being, it's amming. That's the experience of being, is amming. We often put it in I am, but I prefer to sort of drop the I, because as soon as we have the I am, we get into all this heavy philosophical, spiritual stuff about what is the I that is, and is there an I, and all that stuff. So I just prefer it's amming, when we just drop back into our essence, we just are. We are, and there's this, whatever is going on. And that to me is really probably the essential wisdom of all the world's traditions. It all boils down to that. In one way or another, how do we drop back into being, into amming, into source, into awareness? And I wanted to, for today, use some lines from a Buddhist teacher, which I really love, which is, rest in natural great peace. It's what it's all about, resting in natural great peace. This exhausted mind. Our minds get so exhausted, beaten helplessly by karma and neurotic thoughts, like the relentless fury of the pounding waves on the infinite ocean of samsara. To me, this just so sums up our condition and how to just drop back into being. Rest, relaxing. To me, that's the essence of meditation, is just allowing the mind to relax, allowing the attention to relax. Instead of focusing on this or this, just coming back, relaxing the mind. And it is our natural state. Our natural state of being is one of peace. I think this is just there's a natural correlation between what's happening in the world and how we feel inside. If everything is going well, if we're warm, we're fed, there's no danger, there's nothing threatening us, there's nothing that needs attention. If everything's okay in the world, we feel okay inside. It's just a natural thing. That's our natural state of being at rest, is actually feeling okay. We're content. Except that's the way it should be. Most of us, if we're not doing anything, we're far from content because our minds are busy creating some discontent. Robert Sapolsky yesterday was talking about the ways we are different from the ways we're the same, and some of the ways we're different from other creatures. And one of the ways he didn't mention is that human beings, particularly in our culture, spend most of their time in a state of discontent. Most of your animals, most of the time, they're actually quite happy. You watch your dog, your cat, your pets, I would say 90% of the time, 95% of the time, they're at peace. Something comes along that alarms them, they go into a temporary state of discontent, and then they go back into being at peace. We humans, we probably spend most of our life in some form of discontent about something or other. And that's because our attention is out into the past and future. And just try being discontent about something. Try being angry or something without thinking about the past or future in any way. Very difficult, almost impossible. Maybe that's the great blessing of being an animal. They don't get caught up in all this thinking, this worry. That's why when we just come back to just being present without all the thoughts about the past and future, it's just natural to drop back into that state of ease, contentment, peace. But what we do is we create discontent. We find all these things to worry about. We create discontent. I think partly because we live in a society which says if you're not happy, if things aren't fine, if you're not content, there's something wrong. You need to do something about it. You need to go and get something, change something, be somebody else, whatever it is. You need to do something in the world. And if you do something in the right way, get the right thing, then you'll be content. That's the samsara at the end of that line, the infinite ocean of samsara. Samsara means to wander on endlessly. We wander on endlessly looking for one thing for satisfaction, then another thing to make us happy. And they do. They provide some temporary source of satisfaction. We feel happy for a moment or two, or an hour or two, and then that wears off, and then we're looking for something else. Because none of this actually brings real satisfaction, real happiness. But that's the belief system we're sort of indoctrinated into. You know, one of the hidden blessings of the internet is it really brings out how it's not the things that make us happy, but our attitude. I'll explain what I mean here. You think you go shopping and you buy something new, you buy a new jacket or something, and you feel great because buying this thing has made you feel great. You've got some new piece of clothing, and you're happy for a little while, and then it wears off. But we think it's getting the jacket that's made us happy. What I love about the internet is you go online and you do all your research and you find the right thing, you like it, the right style, the right color, the right size and everything. And then comes that magic moment when you hit buy now. And that's when you feel happy. The jacket is, it's another 3 days later the jacket arrives. And then it's probably the wrong size anyway, and you're back in a discontent. The point is, we have created some temporary discontent because we haven't got this thing. We've created some temporary discontent. And then we relieve the discontent by pressing buy now. So we relieve that temporary discontent, and then we'll create another discontent, and then another one. But that's what we're doing, is just creating discontent and thinking we're going to relieve it by getting something. And this is, I think, the sad joke about human beings. We're so busy worrying about how to be happy, how to be at peace in the future. We're so busy worrying about that, we never give ourselves the time to actually step back and be at peace in the present moment. And that's coming back to resting in our own being. And that line, it says, rest, it doesn't say just rest in peace. Which, of course, we put that on our tombstones. After all this struggle, after all this trying to find happiness and sort it out and everything. Finally, we say, okay, life, now you can go and rest in peace. When it's far too late to actually enjoy it. The line is rest in natural, great peace. First of all, I say it's natural. It's our natural state of being is to be at peace. But it's the great peace that I find fascinating in the line. Rest in natural, great peace. And that, in Sanskrit, is ananda. Now, ananda is often translated as bliss. I think when early European explorers started going out to Asia and discovering these completely different cultures, completely different languages, completely different customs and religions, they were fascinated. And they were doing all this research and things, finding out what the words meant. And somehow, the word bliss got attached to ananda. And so, in our culture, particularly in spiritual cultures, the bliss of this, and almost every teacher in India has bliss added to their name for some reason or another. Or as Jean was saying, ananda, ananda, ananda. And that I think is misleading, because it was for me. I know when I first started getting interested in spirituality, I thought, bliss, great bliss, it's going to be somehow if I meditate enough or do this, and I'm going to be taken over by this incredible, amazing, whatever it is, and I don't know, some incredible, blissful, out-of-the-world state. And not to say it doesn't happen, it can happen. But ananda doesn't actually mean that. Nanda means contentment or joy. And the long A in Sanskrit, when you add that to a word, it means, it's emphasis, it means great. So ananda actually means great contentment or great peace. And that's what we touch in meditation. It's that quality of just being so, I'm sure many of you know this, is that quality of just being so at ease and still. There's nothing that can be added to it. There's nothing else you want. I mean, when you're sitting in that quiet state of just being at peace, being at ease, it's just like, why would I want to do anything else at this moment? It's like nothing else can be added to it. That's the great perfection. Perfection literally means everything has been done. There is nothing else to do. That's ananda. It's not some far-off state of mind which we may be lucky enough to be taken over by. It's just that quiet, deep contentment of natural being. And yet, as that line says, our minds are exhausted. Again, when we drop into that quality of being, how do you notice there's that sense of relief? And you can begin to notice how tiring all that thinking is. And it's not to say, thinking is great. I'm not going to put down thinking. It's what's made us what we are as human beings. We can think about things, we can science, we can analyze, we can solve problems, we can work out all this stuff. It's just we don't need to be doing it the whole time. I mean, I think probably, if 10% of my life was spent in thinking when it was useful, that'd be great. If the rest of the time I was just at peace, that'd be much better. And as one teacher once said, 90% of what we think is repeats anyway. We're going over the same stuff, just in case. Or as Mark Twain said, my life, this isn't the exact quote, he said something to the line of, my life has been full of disasters, most of which never happened. We think about all these things. Suppose that, what would happen if I, bumped into so-and-so outside, during the lunch break? What would I say? And of course, you never actually do bump into them, or when you do, it's a totally different conversation. How much of our time is just wasted like that? That's why our minds get exhausted. And why, so many traditions just say it's coming back to letting go of the thinking, coming back to just be here now, being in the present moment. So what I'd like to just offer you in the last few minutes is just a practice which has really become my practice these days. It's like my goal, I suppose my mission, my own mission in life has been just looking at the world's spiritual teachings and looking at what is the essence, just distilling down and down and down to what is that essential wisdom behind all the different metaphysics and frameworks and belief systems and rituals, behind all of that. What is it? What is the essential message? I believe all the spiritual traditions came out of that same essential source, that same essential wisdom. But then over the years, it got passed on from one person to another, and bits got lost, bits got added in, and we end up with all these different traditions which often seem to be in conflict with each other. But what is that essential bit? And for me, it just comes down now to one word. Got down to one word. Pause. Again, Dan was mentioning it. To just pause. To pause thinking, whatever you're thinking, just pause for a moment. We can't stop our thinking, but it will come back. But in any moment, we can just, wherever the interest was going, wherever it was wandering, we can just pause and then notice what is. You start noticing more the present. The present begins to reveal itself. You start noticing some sounds or some feelings in the body or something, or maybe some fainter thoughts going on. Just to notice, and then just to pause again, and just to pause, and just by doing this, gradually the mind settles down. And then, and this to me is the important bit, is to then notice how it feels. Notice how it feels to pause. Notice that glimpse you might have of the natural great peace. Just that sense of relief, that sense of ease. Whatever it is, it may just be very slight. But just to notice that and to savor it. Because that's really where we want to be. Behind everything we do, ultimately, we're doing it because we want to return to that state of contentment, that state of peace. So if that's what we're wanting, then let's just notice it. Notice that quality of peace and ease that's there when we pause. And just savor it. It's like, yes. Because if we do that, then I find it does two things. One, there's the memory of it. And the more there's the memory of how it is to pause, then also the stronger is the motivation to come back to it, and the easier it is to just drop into it. And this, for me, is loving ourself. When we talk about loving the self, many different ways in which we love ourselves, but this is loving our true nature, loving the self, loving the aming, loving the being, just actually loving how it feels to just pause.